My name is Marcia Harvey Isaksson, and right now we're at the bag factory in Johannesburg. I am doing a 3-month residency here. My dad was born in Johannesburg, and his parents divorced, and he moved with his mother to Zimbabwe, and he grew up in Zimbabwe. So when I grew up with my dad, Johannesburg was always this mysterious, mythical place, filled with longing, filled with like things that had been lost, his connection to his father, his connection to his people, to his language. So for me, Johannesburg always had this pull, even though I was kind of afraid of Johannesburg. So coming and spending time here and actually living and working within the city has been so beneficial. It's been like a real connector to my past and has guided a path into the future. This is like my altar, you could say. It's my inspiration. It's a collection of things that are very important to me, starting with this, not the note itself, but the image of Chare, my grandmother's paternal aunt, and she was a Chimrenga hero, and the first Chimrenga in Zimbabwe. She was a spiritual leader. So this is my grandmother, Andile Harvey, and she came here to study because she was sponsored by her grandmother, who wanted her to get an education and have a better life, and so she became a state registered nurse. I started working with the soil. I started experimenting with different ways of trying to bind it so that I could apply it to paper. And what I ended up with was that I wanted to work with the wheat paste that I just cook in my kitchen, and that was mainly because I also like the idea of working with natural materials that will just disintegrate and become part of the earth again. And just get in there. This is the first time I've worked on surface. I don't normally work on a surface. I normally work very 3D, or I'll make a surface. So, painting isn't something that's like my first practice. One thing that I've been doing as well is collecting soil from different places. So, oh goodness, sorry. This is Malville soil. Sorry, this is the pigment is soil from where my father was buried in Zimbabwe at a place called Glen Forest. It's a cemetery, and the soil there is so rich and so red. And in Zimbabwe, they say that the soil is red because of the blood of the people that was spilled. I found that like very symbolically important for me. But I also visited Marion Hill, which is where my grandmother studied, and the soil there is like so different. It's it's almost brown black. So I'm looking forward to mixing this. I haven't tried this out yet. Try it out another day. But I also visited Everton, which is where my father was actually born, and collected some soil, and it's also very different. So there's like so many different kinds of soil that are linked to my lineage, or my father. So my process has actually been very instinctive. I almost like go into a trance, or I feel like I'm channeling something that isn't really coming from an intellectual place. It's just coming from a very spiritual and emotional place. The thing that's also interesting for me right now is that this is a finite material for me. Like, I can't get more Glen Forest soil because I might not go back to Zimbabwe for a while. I can't get more Marion Hill soil. I use this very simple single chain crochet technique, which is like a technique that I learned when I was 5 years old. I learned it from my mom, and it's the simplest technique, and it was the easiest for her to teach me, being left-handed and she was right-handed. And I just like the fact that it's a piece of knowledge that my mom shared with me and that I continue to use. So a lot of my work is about knowledge and the transfer of knowledge and continuing of sharing of knowledge. I'll just Google like uncut diamonds and then I'll do like a series of very quick sketches and then translate that. And this was before I started trying to translate it into crochet. And so when I saw how the crochet actually works out, it ends up being very curvy. And so that's how the sketching developed, from the very like boxy, sharp edges to the more organic, like flowy lines. So the copper for me really is, it connects me to the earth, and working with this gauge of copper wire, it's very flexible, it's very textile, and so it feels like working with textile, but it's the shiny, glitteriness of it that I just don't get with, you know, linen or cotton or something like that. In Joburg right now, people are stealing copper wires, you know, infrastructure's crumbling, and I came with just a few little rolls of copper, and I didn't know that I would work so much with the copper. And so when I got here and there was no copper to be had because it's rare, I was like in a panic, but I managed to import some from, yeah, through a South African company. But it's funny, or like it actually emphasizes this that copper is a precious metal, just like gold. It's actually called red gold by some people, and that resources are finite, and we just don't seem to want to get it as a human race. We just like use things as if they're going to last forever. So I've always worked with words. Either I'll write down something in poetry form or prose or just like phrases, and that could be a trigger for me to dig deeper into what I'm working in, or something that's maybe more relevant for my practice now is that I summarize things by writing them in words. So tomorrow I have this opening at Fire Station in Rosebank, a group show with Lisa Moore Gallery, and I have put together a performance for that, and it's very much linked and tied into this project, and it's a conversation, an imaginary internal conversation with people from my family or my ancestors, kind of motivating why they are in this area, why they're in Johannesburg, why they're in Southern Africa, what brought them here, what's their motivation for being in this space, and in trying to unpack that, I'm trying to understand, like, how did I come to be? So, you know, for instance, there's a conversation with George Henry Harvey, who is my great-great-great-grandfather, I think, something along those lines. He was a Scottishman, and in my mind, I'm wondering, why did the Scottishman come to the shores of South Africa? What's he doing here at that point in time? And you can kind of like deduce certain things from that. Another conversation is my grandmother, who came here to study to become a state registered nurse in Marion Hill, and like the adventure she ended up on. So there's that. I can only imagine what she felt coming to this country for the first time. You know, there is, there are different perspectives, me making stuff up really, but also weaving in real things that have happened and real circumstances that have affected not only my family personally, because I feel like my story is not unique. It's like, it's almost every Southern African story, like the story of how colonialism, how apartheid, how tribalism, how all those things affect how families are and function today. Sleep as the locomotives ride on in the huffing and the puffing and the choo-choo. They seek the far-off places they take you, with the lava of the bedrock and the witch they, like Mendon and rich queen, ride. They seek there's a lot of tangling going on in this, but yeah, so it's a lot about, I'm just trying to connect to my ancestors, really. I think that's the main goal of everything that I'm doing, that I've been doing for the last few years, but also trying to understand, because things aren't just the way they are because they're where you've been, because of what you've been through. And coming back here, I realized that it's there's a lot of trauma and things that I inherited that are like in me, in my body, that I didn't even know that I had inherited. But when I get here, I get it, I understand it, and it just hits me like a ton of bricks. So my work is just a way of processing that, of understanding. So in the last few years, I've been reconnecting to my spirituality, and especially like with the project Matriarchs, Myths and Legends, I really felt that I was being channeled. Once again, I had a plan, and then I ended up doing something completely different to that plan because something took a hold of me. And I like to say that my ancestors came through me and just said, this is what we're doing. And so it's the same here with the soil and this whole new direction that I've taken. I feel like I'm channeling stories, I'm channeling energies, I'm channeling things that are beyond like an intellectual plane. It's more spiritual, it's more emotional, and yeah, I'm just guided by instinct rather than intellectualizing what I'm doing. What does the future hold? I feel like I'm just budding as an artist. I've been focused a lot on making a career as an interior designer, as an exhibition designer, and I can carry on with that work for sure until I retire, but I feel like I want to transition more into making art, and it's really important for me to try and find my voice. And the time that I spent here at the Bag Factory is actually given me that space, that important space and time break within my like day-to-day to actually reflect on what that could look like, what that could be, what that voice sounds like. And so residencies are crucial, I think, for artists wanting to develop, because you only develop really when you make space and time for it. And that's what, you know, this time at the Bag Factory has given me, and I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, it's to be continued. I'm just getting started.
I seek you in my dreams, in my waking dreams, and in my sleep. I seek you in the red earth where you lay deep. I seek you in the rare air on the mountain top where sacred rocks balance in frozen motion. I seek you at the depths of the ocean. I seek you where the ancestors dwell. I seek them as well.